All right. Welcome back, everybody, to Whiskey and Wolves. I am Christopher Lamy, owner of Canine Coaching with Chris. Along with me today again is Evan Stewart, owner of K-Pro Canine.
Yeah, man.
We today are talking about a very cool topic, how to instill the proper mindset when you're talking about a dog.
Yeah.
Dog training is almost entirely about mindset, right? If you can't come into this training or teaching with the proper mindset, you're not going to be very effective and you're not going to have very much fun, right?
Yeah, not super.
But before we dig into that, this is Whiskey and Wolves. So let's talk about the whiskey. This is,
let's go whiskey of the day.
This is my favorite one, guys. If y'all watch that last episode with me and Steph, I kind of gave a little hint about makers. I am a maker's man.
Tell me more about it. Real quick, man. Tell me exactly. I know that you and I have had this conversation a little bit, but like for our audience, you know, and for others that might be listening, like tell us a little bit about why Makers specifically is such a cool whiskey company.
Sure. Yeah. Now, taste wise, it's great, right? It's smooth. Price wise, price point, it's fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Right. This one, the French age, I think it's $33. The regular is $22. You can't beat it.
I got it at Sam's Club for cheap, so I won't say how much.
But what you're getting at, the really cool part is their B Corporation designation.
Agreed.
Okay, and I'm gonna nerd out a little bit here again on the B Corp. And I'm gonna read what it was that a B Corp actually is, and then we'll kind of talk about it just a little bit before we get on. A B Corporation is a corporation or business that meets the highest standards of verified social and environmental performance, public transparency, and legal accountability to balance profit and purpose. Okay.
So for people who are dumb like me, bro, like tell me what that means.
So the last line is key. You are balancing as a B Corp. They are allowed to balance purpose with profit. Right. Ooh. So most of the corporations in America are C corporations, C as in cat, right? Yeah. This is B as in boy. A C corporation, because of a court case a long time ago involving Henry Ford, a C corporation by law, the only job that they have is to make money for their shareholders. That's it. By law, they have to make decisions because these corporations are run by board of directors, correct? Sure. So you have 13 men, usually 13 people that are making decisions for this entire company. And so their decisions have to, by law, equal the greatest profit.
Otherwise,
they will be sued by attorneys that make a lot of money following these people and suing
by their
them.
Shareholders.
By their shareholders. Yes. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
So when we have conversation, this is aside just briefly, right? Because we're going to get into dog stuff, guys, I promise you. Right. But like it behooves me to dig into your legal background here a little bit, right?
Please,
like as a lawyer, right? So like as companies go, right? Like it is incumbent upon C corporations to chase profit at all costs.
Yes,
one might say.
Yes, that's a great way to say it. Yeah.
And so here with a B corporation, right? Like we're not chasing profit at all costs. We're not poisoning fish, dogs, people, right? We're looking at that situation. We're going, hey, I'm not in like the push is not to make profit at all costs in a purely capitalist, amoral scope.
Yes.
Right. But to say, hey, as a B corporation, we're going to take the option to look around the world and say, hey, what's best for us and the world at large?
Exactly.
Would you agree?
I would agree. And what's beautiful about it, right, is there's a B, I think it's B Corp Lab or B Lab Corp or something like that. It's a nonprofit organization that certifies B corporations. So Makers as a B corporation can't just say, hey guys, we're a B Corp now, we're doing stuff good. You have to get certified, right? Ooh. Through that nonprofit organization. So if you see, and I don't know if it's on here, but if you see that little B, no, it is not, on there, you can know that someone has already verified that this company is, again, balancing profit with purpose. There's a lot of environmental issues that go along with it. And there's some really great B corporations out there. Tom's, have you heard of Tom's, the shoes?
Of course.
Right? Yeah. They give away every pair of shoe that's bought, they give one away.
They give one away, right? Yeah. So Tom's like, delving back into my history a little bit, right? Like through COVID to keep my company solvent, right? I went to work for Petco for a short time, and they actually, and into Petco's everlasting, kind of credit, right?
Petco's a great company.
They kind of are in a lot of ways. They've kind of stepped back off of some of their stuff in their recent leadership, but under Ron, they really did a lot of great things for making sure that, hey, we were feeding nothing with dyes or artificial flavors. That kind of thing. They were really, really interested in they branded themselves in 2020 as the health and wellness company. I've got some back in that company here and there, and they've kind of stepped back off of that here in the recent market, right? As things have gotten tighter in the US. But take it for what it is, here was a company that really was looking for the overall, benefit, I would say, of dogs and people. In
all of these corporations, right? We can talk about how evil corporations are all you want, right? It's profit, whatever. These corporations are looking for our money. It's the consumers that bear the real weight. So my little part in this is drinking B Corp.
You know what,
making the world a better place, man. Look, dude, so thank you.
Hey, cheers, man.
Yes, sir.
But I brought Petco up specifically because they had a whole line of not just shoes that they were selling in a pet store, but they also had a leash collar combo and a harness combo that they put out there, to help people in less fortunate countries, because that's the whole idea with Tom's, right? Is like, they don't give a pair of shoes away to your neighbor.
Right.
They give a pair of shoes away to people that can't put shoes on their feet.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So that's a huge deal.
Yep.
Right?
So I encourage everybody to kind of check out B Corp, man. Trader Joe's is another one. Patagonia. There's some really, really great brands. But let's move forward. We are here to talk about dogs.
We're debunking the bunk in dog training.
Talking about mindset. And mindset, man, this is really, really up both of our alleys. I mean, is both as human beings and as trainers. Yeah. You cannot enter a training program with the wrong mindset. You're not going to get the desired result, right?
Right.
And so a lot of time, one of the things I was taught in the military over and over and over again is everything flows down leash. If you're having a bad day, your dog's gonna have a bad day. If you're having anxiety, if you're angry, your dog's gonna feel it. And that makes sense, right? We've talked about the power behind a dog's nose. The dogs can smell that, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things we discussed in talking about this topic about mindset is some of the key words and some of the main ideas that you should have.
Concepts, one might say.
Yeah. What are some of the concepts? What are some of the main themes and ideas that you should go into training or into your, quality time with your dog?
Right.
Thinking of. So why don't you go ahead and start us off? What are some of your your key words?
So before we got on the show today, right? Like, we were of course kind of, spitballing this a little bit, like, hey, making sure we were on the same page. And one of the things that I said really was consistency, right? So it's one of the things that every client encounters that I've ever been engaged with in dog training, but curating a consistent mindset for your dog, consistent criteria, regardless of environmental influence, regardless of what kind of day you're having, right? Like, but really curating consistency and again, like things like comportment, right? Like, how do you put yourself together to step out to go train your dog, right? What I'll tell you is, and this as well as I do, and lots of other professional dog trainers are going to be listening to this, like they know this as well. But coaching into consistency is actually a little bit of a difficulty for some, right? Because in that place where we're coaching into consistency, we also run into a little bit of conflict often with our clients, right?
Well, life is busy.
It is hectic. Busy, right? And it's hectic, and life throws us curveballs all over the place. And then there's this other thing that happens to us that I think kind of torpedoes consistency, something that, going back to both our military careers, right? Like, I can look at it and go, it's the good idea fairy, right? So let me give a little bit of an entrance into the good idea fairy. The good idea fairy is essentially this idea, right? That like one day, your superior shows up with this great idea, right? And everybody who's ever had a boss knows what the good idea fairy is, right? Because the good idea fairy comes by and almost, drips honey in your ear while you sleep, right? About, oh my God, this earth-shaking, brand new, nobody's ever heard of it idea before, right? And that by itself can torpedo clients' consistency, right? And so, like in my experience, one of the places where the good idea fairy like shoots people in the foot, I've gotten about halfway through with dogs, like all the way from like a basic dog to a finished dog, where like they have all of, the possibilities in what I would call obedience colloquially, right? Kind of hammered in, right? And they go, what do you think if we made my dog a therapy dog, right? Or a service dog? Or what if I could teach my dog bang you're dead and he could just fall over from, an elevated sit position, whatever it is, right? It's the good idea fairy that kind of sometimes I've seen just torpedo good progress.
And some of those can be good ideas.
Some of them
when your dog is ready.
And some of them suck.
Yeah, some of them suck.
Yeah.
One of the things I talk, and this kind of goes into consistency, I tell my clients all the time is,
dude, this is good.
Like I'm telling you, I'm a maker's man. Think about it like playing baseball, right? Or softball.
Yeah.
You are not going to jump out there and play shortstop on a championship team until you spend hours learning how to throw a ball, how to catch a grounder, how to swing a baseball bat, right? That takes consistency. It takes practice. And if you are not practicing and giving your dog that practice time consistently, you're not going to be able to go out there and play shortstop on a championship team. You're just not.
You're not wrong. My dad's one of, and you know this about me, but our listeners definitely don't. But my dad is, funny enough, one of the winningest soccer coaches in all of Florida history for high school sports, right?
Winning just flows in your family.
Oh, all I do is anyway, but like take this for what it is, right? Like, one of the things I learned from my dad growing up a little bit, right, is that practice doesn't necessarily make perfect, right? If you practice a wrong thing over and over again, you just get better at doing it wrong, right? So it's not that practice makes perfect, it's that perfect practice makes perfect. Slowing down, and this is the next word on our list that like I really want to. Man, I know. But like, and I'm soft pitching it, right? But like, stay tuned. But like, this is the next word on our list, right? Is that if you don't have the patience, that's right. If you don't have the patience to kind of learn to be consistent, you're never going to get to that place that you want to go, right? So when we look at the idea of, hey, I want a dog to do XYZ things, right? That's cool, right? Like you can have your goal set. But if you don't have the patience to get there, you're messing it up. The number of potential service dog clients that we get calls for at K-Pro that are like, hey, this is my favorite. I had a previous service dog that could do XYZ things. I went and I got a puppy at 8 weeks. How old's your dog now? Oh, my dog's 16 weeks old. Okay, so we're talking about 4 months on the planet. Let's be honest, right?
That thing is still learning how to run properly.
God knows, right? Yeah. Like locomotion isn't even all the way there yet, right? So, but like, hey, I my dog's 4 months old. I don't know why it won't hold it down, stay for me in public. I don't know why I can't get it to in underneath a table and like lay there throughout. And it's like, because take this for what it is, you have not put in the patience that it takes to build this animal. People in our society now, right? And we all know this. There's lots and lots of study on it. I'm not telling anybody they don't know whenever I say this, but like, hear me out, man. Like we need to lean back from the instant gratification society that we've been built into since the mid 90s, right? Like, the ability to have information at our fingertips with the internet, in my opinion, right? IMO, right? That's my favorite new acronym online, right? Has not in any real way given us the opportunity and availability to really push into patience, right? And we want something to happen overnight. The number of service dog clients that we get that are like, hey, can you make my dog a service dog by XYZ time, right? They call me in June and they want their dog to be a service dog by the time their kid goes back to college in the fall. Call me in January. You know what I mean? Like, 7-8 months with an appropriately aged dog is a possibility. 3 months with an underage dog is not, it's not really a possibility, right? And people just don't realize it.
Well, and something else that you pretty much hit on, but our lives just move so quickly. Right? One of the most important things that you can ever teach your dog is to just be. Just sit still. Just hang out, man. I just want you to be. Right?
Do you see my face? Do you know how excited I am about that?
It is one of the most important things you can teach your dog.
Thanks for bringing it up.
But in order to do that, we have to be able to sit still. And guess what? Sitting still, staring at our phone, that's not the same thing, right? Because that's one of our other words, engagement. If you're not engaging with your dog, they're not going to care, right?
And if your dog doesn't have engagement with you, how could it possibly learn from you?
Exactly.
Right?
Yep. One of the things I say all the time, our dogs have learned over time that they can be far more persistent than we can be patient. I knew you'd like that.
Man, I knew you'd like it. Yeah, of course.
but
that's a great way to articulate the dynamic.
True, because dogs are very selfish. They want what they want, and they want it right now. And they know 100% that if they just keep going, we're going to give in. Not in my house, right?
Chris, can I hire you to come train my dogs, man? Like literally, look, I'm just saying, I don't have a beer pocketbook, but like, no, I say that for this, right? Is, back before, like I was offering my services professionally, I looked for years for somebody with that mindset, right? That like, hey, listen, you need to put in the reps, right? You need to take time. Mm-hmm. This is not programming a computer. We are not simply laying down lines of code.
Tuning up a car. Yep.
Right. We're not laying down lines of code that the animal then becomes respondent to. Right. Instead, right, like we are building, and this is another one of our words, man, we're moving through our list. I'm excited. Right. But like we're building relationship.
Yes.
And what does it take, and here's the question I have for you, right? Like, in your mindset, what does it take to build meaningful relationship?
Almost all of our keywords. I think it takes patience. I think it takes consistency. I think it takes engagement.
Love.
A lot of love. Yeah. Absolutely. One of those phrases that, hurt people, right?
Ooh.
Healed people, heal people. Yeah. Patient people can teach patience, right? Yeah. Dogs have taught me an immense amount of patience. And here's the most beautiful thing. There's two things about patience before we move on that I really, really love talking about. One, when we do just sit there and have our dogs just stop, right?
Chill out.
What are they going to do at first? They're going to get confused. Right. And they're like, wait, what are we doing? I'm ready to go. Why can't we go? I want to go to the car. I want to go here. I want to go there.
Right. Maybe anxious.
So by making them sit there and sit through this, we let them work through that. And what are we doing? We're initiating their problem solving abilities. Right. Dogs are scavengers. They are problem solvers. And so we're giving them an opportunity to say, hey, you want to go see that mailbox over there? Okay. How do we do that? How do we do that? And then that leads to another keyword, right? Teamwork. We're only going to do that together. You're never going to get to that mailbox by yourself.
Yeah.
Now figure out how to get me to go there, right? With coaching and all of that stuff.
Of course, yeah.
But calming down, slowing down, it's so great for your dogs. And one of the things that I think people get too ahead of themselves on is like, oh, my dog has so much energy. I got to go. I got to let him go, right? I got to let him run. I got to let him walk. The mental exercise of problem solving and standing still and sniffing and just engaging with the environment is so much more healthy than just that mindset of I need to go here, I need to go here, I need to go here.
To your point in health, right? Like the idea, right, that like 4 walls in a backyard is enough for your dog is absolutely, from a professional training standpoint, asinine, right?
Think about the way dogs roam, right? Pack animals. They go on pack walks. Right. They need to know their area. They're stuck in these apartments or even a nice yard, right?
Right. But even ethologically speaking, right? Like you're talking about 12 to 24 miles a day for like, their closest, and don't get me wrong, right? Ethology for domestic dogs is fraught, right? Because we have genetic predispositions based on breed, right? So like some breeds are more predisposed to this idea or that idea. You know, King Charles Cavalier Spaniels, right? Like they're predisposed to lay in your lap, right?
One of my favorite breeds.
I bet, right? On the other, mine too, for that record, right? Like they rarely need training, and when they do, it's
They're
like,
so perfect.
hey, can you hang out, right? The other side of that though is, my mals, right, are like they need way more than a cavy does all day long, right? Like just to be healthy, put together, well done, right? Like
you said just to be healthy. Those are things that they need in order to be healthy.
That's right. And we talked a little bit about like, in our Q&As not long ago. We did individual Q&As not long ago. Yeah, it was fun, right? Like, we had one of my lead trainers on to ask us some questions. Her name's Steph Martin. And legitimately, like one of the questions she asked both of us is like, hey, how do you pick the dog for you? Right. And I think we found commonality in answer, which is, hey man, like you need to pick a dog that has breed characteristics that align with your lifestyle.
Yes, and be honest with yourself about what you're going to do, not about what you want to do.
Exactly.
One more thing before we move on from patience that I love, right? Dogs have taught me patience, very much so, right?
Tell me more, man.
I think that children in the house, and when I say children, I'm talking about probably 9 or 10 to 15, 16, right? They need to have mental cognition. They are such an asset in helping train dogs because they can take them out on walks. And if mom, dad, and kid number one are all taking the dog out and spending time with the dog, that's more time that the dog gets. Also, that kid has so much to learn from that dog, including patience. Now, as a patient individual, and I'm very much still learning, but you're a relatively patient individual.
I try.
We try, at least. Think about how beneficial that is to your life if you can learn to be patient, if you can learn to slow down a little bit and just stand there and be like, oh, my dog needs a little bit of time. All right, let me just stare off at the flowers for a little while. It adds a little bit of beauty to your life. While, yes, exactly. Right? Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at.
Yeah, let me enjoy the world for a while, right? So one of the things that we talk about all the time at K-Pro, right, like is the idea of a sniffari, right? So like this is a place where, you dig it, right? You're going to keep that. But like one of the places that we talk about this is in the opportunity and availability for your dog to just sniff the world out a little bit, right?
It's how they see the world.
And their olfactory sense, as we've talked about before, and we'll continue to talk about as long as we talk about dogs, is the idea that like, hey, in that place where dogs are encountering the world, their primary sense is their olfactory sense, right? So they're encountering the world in scent fields and odor objects.
In ways that we have no way of really truly understanding.
Oh, we have no idea.
I mean, we have no way of understanding that the immense power that they have is something that we just can't quite understand.
Yeah. One of the interesting books that I use, and don't get me wrong, it's a controversial book and there are many reasons not to talk about this book, right? But like, I'm going to talk about it briefly because one of the places that through apprenticeship, and mentorship for other dog trainers that I have included in my program, right? Is this book, by this guy, from Baden Canine in, Canada, where he really delves deeply for about 2 chapters of his book as to how dogs encounter the world through odor.
It's important.
It's massively important. Yep. And don't get me wrong, there are other portions of this book that I'm like, that was rough, right? And through, solid mentorship, we talk about the ways in which that was rough. It's essentially like a pen pal relationship that he has, with a character that is named Gunther, that was an SS officer, right? So like, there's some crazy in here, that is part of our history as well. But, I include it in my program really specifically to talk about almost the metaphysical aspect, right? And so one of the things that we forget about a lot in dog training is the metaphysical aspect of dog training. And I think that it exists, right? So when we talk about metaphysics, right, we talk about the things that we can't see that, we feel that are tangible to us in other ways, right? And, here we find this thing that we can't comprehend. We can't comprehend the olfaction on a dog, right? Like we literally can't comprehend it, right? Having the patience to let them analyze their surroundings makes them more healthy.
It makes them more healthy, and it's a great way to get their energy out as well. Right?
Absolutely.
There are so many
And
mental
bond.
neurons going on when they're
Tell me
sniffing.
more. Yeah.
The rumor is, and I could be wrong on these numbers, but rumor is about 15 minutes of sniff work is equivalent to about 45 minutes of moderate physical activity.
Like fetch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So when people go out and we're talking about, be patient, we're not saying like, don't get energy out of your dog. Your dog's still it's going to be just as productive, and you're not going to have to really move so much, right?
Yeah. So one of the ways that I do this with my own crew, right, is that Chuck It a few years ago, and if you're in the dog community and you don't know Chuck It, you're out of your mind, right? So like Chuck It makes a ton of different fetch products. They're all about dog enrichment and engagement, right? Like as a company, they're really, really solid. They're not a B Corp. I'm gonna dig deeper into that. Don't get me wrong, right? But like one of the things that they did a couple years ago is they produced balls that have an odor that simulates either chicken or peanut butter.
Yeah.
Right. And the chicken ones are green, and the peanut butter ones are blue, right? And out here on this rural property that like I live on, right? Like I have left large swaths of my property uncut. Right. So even whenever I'm doing fetch, right, it's also odor work.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
In the tall grass, you can't see the ball anymore. My dogs are, I almost you smile and say my dogs are getting to be the geriatric crew. Right. And so I don't want them, tearing out a knee after a ball, because all my dogs are high drive dogs. Right. But like I want them to have the opportunity and availability to use their odor, olfaction, to really get in there and pay attention. And if, like for instance, my youngest dog is a 4.5-year-old Belgian Malinois named Ghost, right? And she's a lot of dog to live with, right?
Malinois get a Malinois.
Don't do it, right? But if you're going to, realize that this is the kind of thing that it takes, right? Is that I cut my grass different based on the dog that I have, right? Like all the way down to the baseline of how we live, right, is based on my dog's ability to be fulfilled, right? And so, and again, don't get a Malinois.
Don't get a Malinois. And if you do, call Evan. No, don't call Chris.
Don't call Chris.
I just sent him a Malinois yesterday.
You sure did, man. You sure did. We called
this dog in my house.
So, but like take this for what it is. Mals are a lot of dogs.
They're fantastic animals. I'm not talking trash about them. They're amazing.
No. They're
just
amazing,
so
amazing dogs. But like, on that point, and we're going to talk about this probably briefly almost every episode, right? Because like this is near and dear to our hearts. I mean, this dude has mal ears on his arm, right? And I own them. And the reality of the situation is that like these dogs need more than the average owner can provide. But my point here in bringing it up is simply this, is that odor work is really important. And why do I do that? Right? Like, why do I leave large swaths of, acreage uncut so that I can play, a little bit of fetch in there? Not only is it for their enrichment, but it's also because this is one of our next words, right? Because I love them, right? And I want them to be fulfilled, and I want to share that love with them. And I want to be in that place where I love my dog enough. This is one of the things that as a professional trainer, whenever I have my own clients, where even from the evaluation standpoint, so a lot of trainers don't sell training before they do an evaluation, right? I want to come out. I want to meet you. I want to meet your dog. I want to know your dog. I want to understand what's going on, right? I want to see the husbandry situation that you have going on. How are you living with? How are you keeping with your dog, right? I want to see the dog himself, right? Or herself, right? I want to see like, hey, what predispositions do we have going on here? I want to see the ways in which you're interacting with your animal. I want to understand it, at a base notion, can I be a value add to your situation, right? And some people I say no to, but in those places where I say yes, one of the first things I talk about is, you love your dog. And everybody goes, of course I love my dog.
Of course.
Of course I love my dog.
That's a silly question. Yeah.
Right? Of course I fucking love my dog. Who doesn't love their dog, right? But how much? Do you love your dog enough to tweak your lifestyle a little bit?
To make some changes.
Do you love your dog enough to build patience in yourself? Do you love your dog enough to be consistent in your training modalities, right? Like no matter how you're training, right? Whether it's with, positive reinforcement only, or your pressure on, pressure off with a slip lead, whatever it is that you're doing, how much do you love your dog to be consistent?
And love is a very cool word when you're talking about it when dog training, because if we talked, one of our first episodes was how do you choose a dog trainer?
Yeah.
Right? If here's a good answer that we may not have talked about. If your dog trainer's face doesn't light up when they talk about what they're doing, then it may not be the right one.
Right.
We have the coolest job of all time. I love this. Dogs are the only creature on this earth. I don't know whose quote this is, but I'm going to steal it. It's Christopher's now.
Get it.
Dogs are the only creatures on earth that will love you more than they love themselves. I have seen Malinois, going back to Mal's, I have seen Malinois
lay their life down for their friend.
Beat with sticks. I have seen Malinois get literally shot and not let go of that bite, right? They are listening to their owner. I got a cool story.
Or their handler,
their owner, right?
Or the partner that they have in a combat situation. I'm assuming, right?
Yes, absolutely.
In a combat situation where it's like, hey, listen, just the same way. And this touches a chord in me, right? Like, I'm a United States Marine, right? Like one of the base notions of who we are is that we never leave someone behind, right? And that we'll lay our lives down for our friends, right? And having the opportunity to do some of that in my life and be in combat zones and that kind of thing, right? There is, and all the canine handlers that are listening to this, like, guys, you're doing amazing work on a regular basis, and we thank you so much for the amount of work that you're doing to keep our community safe, to keep our people safe. And in all honesty, to live with these amazing animals that we so heavily revere,
that we love.
You know what I mean?
Yep. I got a cool story I want to tell you about, kind of similar to your leaving all the stuff out here. So when I was 16, I had a first dog that I like really, really trained. It was a golden retriever, Sonny. It was, this one right here. And we had a big 2-story house in Long Beach, Mississippi. Yeah. And I would take tennis balls and I would throw them over the house into the woods.
You had a 2-story house in Long Beach, Mississippi?
It's not there anymore.
I was like, are you rich, dude? Was this like before or after Katrina?
Before Katrina,
bro.
It was after Katrina took care of it. It's a slab. It's a slab now.
Unfortunate. So sorry for that.
That's all right. So anyway, I would take tennis balls and I would throw them over the house as far as I could. And there was nothing but woods behind us. And so Sonny would go out there and he would find them every time and bring them back. Right. And so I was like, all right, this dog's just got a stockpile of balls back there. And so I would start writing my initials on them or writing like an X and throw them back there. And every time, and this house, I'm going to throw it that way. And I'm going to throw it this way. Every time that dude would come back, I would do the same thing with golf balls. I would go out and just in the woods, hit a golf ball. And that guy would go find it. The strength behind there is immense. We talked about love.
Yeah.
It's a really, really good segue into teamwork. Right.
So,
we talked about the combat, but whether you're in combat or whether you're in a house, I mean, you and your dog are a team.
That's a great question, man. And here's the way that I would respond to that. Right. So, in training dogs and in building mindset for training, right? Like it's a very mindful practice, I would say. Right. So that's a huge buzzword over the last 10 years. Oh, mindfulness. Very, very, cutesy, very demure, right? Like that's going on in social media these days. Cracks me up, right? But if you have social media in any way, you've probably seen one of these videos, and if you haven't, and God knows this lives forever on the internet, just know that it was silly, right? But the reality of the situation is that love, teamwork are all built on this, consistency, patience, right? Like all these things come back to this idea that we have that I would call trust, right? So for years and years, the way that I've described trust to my clients, right? Like the reason that my dog will do what I ask him to do whenever I ask him to do it, right? So I used to train in a kind of a busy tourist environment, right? Like with my Malinois Phantom, right? And Phantom is a fantastic Mal. He's done lots of really, really great work in a myriad of environments, right? But one of the things that I've told people for a long time is like, what does it mean to have trust, right? And that is this, right? In my mind, it is the ability to witness. This is a really interesting idea as far as I'm concerned. Maybe other people are like, duh, right? But like for me, it's the ability to witness repeated good choices and behaviors in another, right? So like if you look at the baseline of any real relationship, it's the, like the place where we go, hey, I can recognize in our friendship, for instance, right? Like I can recognize that, like these things aren't specifically one way or the other. Like nobody's looking for anything from me. Like this is an honest friendship where like there's no ulterior motive. There's no craziness going on. Mm-hmm. And it's the ability to witness good and repeated. And that's the real answer, right? Repeated over a period of time, however long that takes for you, choices and behaviors in another, right?
I see it a little different.
Hit me.
And it's in relation to dogs, right? My dog, I'll go Sydney Michael. I trust that he is going to do every single thing I ask him to do.
Why?
Because he knows that I'm going to give him every single thing he needs.
Right.
Dogs have different needs. They have different drives. They have different motivators.
So you're meeting all his needs is what you're saying.
Sydney Michael gets every one of his needs met. Every dog that comes into my...
And Sid's a dope dog, man.
Well, he's kind of an asshole, but...
No, but like take it for what it is. He's a dope dog. I mean, here's a dog who chose my kid first time we met him, right? Came over late.
He's amazing. Lap, he is amazing. He's had some issues in the past.
Sure.
Who hasn't? Like Elizabeth says, Sydney's bit a few people. He's had a couple nips. But like Elizabeth says, you know how many people Chris has bit?
Me too, man.
I guess so. I guess you're right.
I've got a history of people, delve deeply enough into me where they're going to find out that I used to do weird things like bounty hunting and weird shit. Mm-hmm. I've bit some people over the years.
You look like you could bite some people. But when we get back to like training dogs that comes into my home, right? One of the, I won't say more difficult issues, but one of the more time consuming, I guess, is building that relationship of trust and building that idea that, hey, bud, I know you just met me last week, but we're a team, right?
We're together.
I am going to give you every single thing you need, not just food and rest and water and all of that good stuff,
right?
But all these instinctual things that you need, right? This opportunity to go sniff and smell. I'm going to give you that, right?
I'm going to give you all the things that you enjoy and the things that you need.
Yes.
I'm going to fulfill your life.
There's three things that I focus on here. Needs, right? What does this dog need to be happy, healthy, and to want to do what I'm asking him to do, right? Drives. What type of mental motivators do these dogs have, right? A Malinois has a much different drive than a King Charles does, right? And then want. Really? What does this dog want, right? What is his love language? Thank you, sir.
Of course.
So between all of these three things, right? Giving a dog what they need, what they want, and then what their instincts are asking of them, you're giving them everything that they could possibly want, right? Everything they could possibly need. So when I ask them to do something, the idea is that they trust that I'm asking them to do that for the betterment of the pack. Right. And we can kind of go into pack drive and that idea, right? Pack drive is the idea that pack animals want to do what is best for the pack and for the pack leader. And while I'm not really an alpha trainer, I'm not really like, oh, you got to be the alpha, you got to be the pack leader.
Yeah, we know that that's been a little dispelled, right?
Yeah, not really.
It's not scientifically supported in some ways.
But it is a teamwork, right? It is a relationship. And in just like a relationship you have with your child, you are in charge of that relationship. And so it is on you to make sure that you are fulfilling all of the needs of that team, right? Whether it's your child or your dog.
Sure.
And again, we've talked about this a lot. I'm not advocating that you treat your dog like your child. But in a certain sense,
yes and no, right? And
yes, you are the leader of that relationship.
Right. But let's clarify that a little bit, that like we don't treat dogs like kids, but we, in that like portion, right? And this is, I think, really important to me, is that like we give the dog everything that they need to be healthy, happy, and well fulfilled.
Right.
The same way that we would our children.
There
right?
you go. Yep.
But species specific. We don't actually treat dogs
very
like
good distinction.
Children.
Very good distinction.
Right?
And in the show, during the show, and while we talk, and when I talk to my clients, I liken dogs to kids or to humans.
Sure, it's
right?
an easy input.
You amorphize them. Did I say it right?
Anthropomorphize.
Damn it.
It's okay. You got it.
All right. I do that, but only in the way to explain to humans my point, right? We can't treat dogs like humans. We just can't. No. They don't deserve to be in strollers. They don't deserve to be in Bjorn carriers.
Right. Bjorn's no, right. But like, hear me out, right? Like, this is the other side of that in my mind, right? Is that dogs deserve to be treated like the opportunistic predators they are, right? You know what I mean? You know? And so like, it's one of the reasons that even with my personal dogs, like we compete in a number of sports. Do I treat my dog any different if they perform less so on the backside? The answer is no, right?
I'm excited. You don't bring them through PJ's drive-through and let them get a pup cup if they did really well?
I do both, right? Like whether they sucked that day or whether they were awesome that day, right? Like that dog's going to put out everything that they can for me, right? And so like, one of the things that we do at K-Pro a lot as a team, right, is that we go to AKC Fast Cat ideas, right?
Yes.
And Fast Cat is all about, colloquially what I call drag racing for dogs, right? It's how fast can your dog run that 100 yards?
Oh,
right?
Speaking of, Elizabeth really wants to see Molly do that. And
dude, we're going to do it together. It's going to be a tailgating situation. It's going to be a good time. But, in that place, right, like one of the things that we're really looking at, right, is how much fun is the dog having? Is it fun for me to watch my dogs go exercise and do a cool thing? Of course it is, right? Am I proud of my dogs whenever they do it? Of course I am, right? But if my dog goes out there and runs an 8 as opposed to a 7.4, am I mad at that?
As long as he had fun.
Not usually, right? I'm just not I'm not pissed about it, right? I'm like, hey, that's where they are today. Right. It's a snapshot event.
So that's a cool idea too. Is sometimes we forget dogs have bad days too.
Fuck yeah.
Right. Dogs wake up on the wrong side of the bed.
Dogs have really bad days some days, right? Like depending on environmentals and what else is going on in life.
That is one of one of the more shocking things that I have discovered over time in doing this job is just how in depth these dogs' emotions are.
And to that point, no matter how much training, and this is I differentiate between training and behavior all the time for my clients, right? And I'm sure that you do too. But like, no matter how much training a dog has, sometimes, their behavior is their behavior. I'll give you a good, for instance. I've got a 7-year-old Belgian Malinois. His name's Phantom, and he's a fantastic dog. He's taught strange dog safety to lots of young kids. He's done lots of really, really cool things in life, right? But the reality of the situation is that recently, like in the last 6 months, he's picked up an aversion to storms, right?
Not 7 years old, huh?
Right. Like never was there before, right? But now whenever there's like a heavy thunderstorm, homeboy's like, I'm going to go crawl in the kennel if you need me. I'm going to go hide under the blankets if you need me. Like, I'm not going to mess with that. And it's not because he's ever been left out in a storm or he's ever had bad experience with the storm. There's lots of reasons, right? That could have sprung forward. Right. But I'm not really interested in what the motivation is there. Right. I'm interested at this point in his life in making him comfy. Right. And maybe that's a reinforcement schedule that I'm not addressing, right? But even so, right, this goes back into relationship for me, right? We're like, hey, I need vocabulary for relationship. We need to be able to talk a little bit, right? That's where basic obedience comes in, basic through advanced, however your programs are laid out, dog trainers out there, right? If you're a dog trainer and you're listening to this and you're like, hey, listen, I don't have like a specific way that I work. All right, listen. All right, there's no magic in dog training. You're not fucking special. Okay. Like, there are things that you're doing that everyone else is doing. There's no magic here, it's largely scientific, but building vocabulary is one of the ways that you can set your dude. It's one of the ways that you can set your dog at ease. You know what I mean?
Yes. And to that point, at ease, I think one of the things that we as a society, and I was guilty of it for some time, is we go right in and we start training our dog, right?
Immediately.
What did we miss?
Right.
We didn't teach them anything.
What about personality?
Yeah, we didn't go in and say, hey, this is a toy, right? This is not a toy.
Right. Or does your dog want that? You know what I mean? Like, does your dog want that kind of specific idea that you're putting forward, or are you just forcing your dog into an idea?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really like the idea of almost letting my dogs train themselves, right?
I know.
The sit is a very natural thing for a dog to
Every
do.
dog in all of history sits, right?
They love sitting because it always equals treats, right? So it's very easy to train the sit.
Yeah, even in our society. But I mean, like, let's not bullshit and say that like gray wolves don't sit.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
And so if every time that dog's or wolf's butt hits the ground, they get something awesome, we're going to keep doing it.
Or if they're just tired and they get something,
right, and they're going to keep doing it. But
right?
that's different than teaching them, hey man, guess what? I understand there's a trash truck going by and it's really, really loud and smelly because God knows what that thing smells like.
Right.
But you're fine. You are safe. You're still okay. And guess what? You still got to listen to me.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think one of the key things that we can talk about is teaching your dog and not skipping that. Right. You use what is it? Teach, train, test, right?
Yeah, 3 T's, right?
Teach, train, proof.
They
kind of the same idea.
Yeah, for sure, right? Like they put this on us in the Marine Corps, right? Teaching, training, testing, right? Like we can't test a concept before we train a concept. We can't train a concept before we're taught the concept, right? So like teaching, training, testing goes all the way back to like the RTC and Recruit Training Center in Paris Island, where they're like, hey, take it for what it is, guys. We're not gonna test you on a thing that we haven't taught you how to do, right? Yep. So like we get to the rifle range in Marine Corps, right? And like we've had a whole week in marksmanship instruction before we're expected to qualify. And even before that happens, we have a whole almost 6 days of practice, live fire practice, right? Real rounds, real range, right? In marksmanship before we're tested on our marksmanship ability.
And it goes back to the idea that we talked about earlier with baseball or softball, right?
100%.
You have to teach them how to do all of the things that you expect them to do.
Whether you're fielding a ball, whether you're throwing a ball into the infield from the outfield.
I remember training, and this was kind of a training ideal back then, or at least how I was taught to train when I was 16. We just waited for the dog to do something. We yelled no. They're going to learn eventually, right?
Yeah.
But it's not you're still not teaching. You're correcting, you're punishing.
Right.
I look for proactive ways to teach my dog everything that I want them to be able to encounter in our lives.
And that proactivity is so important, right? And we talk about that now all the time, right? Like in professional dog training, we're no longer gone are the days that we are punishment heavy if we're in professional dog training.
If you're punishing your dog, you're probably missing some steps, to be honest. You said it. This is a science.
Right.
I mean, but excuse me, continue.
No, you're totally fine. And the interjection was welcome, because the reality of the situation is that all of us in professional dog training, and this is why we debunk the bunk in dog training, right? But like, all of us in professional dog training have found people that are charging for services that their go-to is to punish behaviors out of a dog instead of teach a dog what we want, right? So one of the things that I learned growing up is, man, you guys are going to get tired of hearing me say this, because man, oh man, do I love this concept, right? And that is pet what you want, because what you pet, you'll get, right?
Walk that out for me.
Yeah. So, it immediately, right? Like you engage a reinforcement schedule every time you engage with your dog, right? I
see where you're going.
And pet the things that you want.
Absolutely.
Right? Like if your dog's clawing your chest, like jumping on you coming in the door, and you pet that because you're like, oh, here, I'll give you what you want, and then you'll go away.
Yep.
Right?
You are training them to do that.
You're training them to do that.
That is one of the most consistent things that I see my clients do
So
almost across the board. And I think it's human nature, right? A lot of dogs, and we'll have an episode about this. A lot of dogs, especially since COVID, are dealing with some amount of fear. Right.
Agreed.
And it materializes in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, sure.
But when you get down to the root cause of it, a lot of what we are dealing with on a day-to-day basis is fear. And so when a human senses that another creature, a dog, is in fear, what do you want to do? You want to comfort them.
You want to comfort them.
So I see it. 70% of my clients, right?
Yeah.
Is they come up and they do something bad or wrong, and there's, oh no, you're okay, baby, you're okay. Like, whoa,
okay. It's gonna be okay.
You are enforcing, you're reinforcing that behavior. You're right. And so they are teaching their dog inadvertently, hey, I don't like that you're doing this, but I'm gonna love you.
So from a professional dog trainer standpoint, like, hear me out, right? Like, you get what you pet is the reality, right? Like, understand there's a what I call an attention economy, right? Where like, hey, listen, like, the dog asked for your attention. That doesn't mean that you owe that dog your attention if he asked for it or she asked for it, right?
Agreed.
But, like, if you pay attention to whatever that is, you're going to get more of it, right?
If that dog learned that barking opens that kennel door, guess what? You're going to have a barky dog.
Demand barking, right?
Absolutely.
Like, all of us in professional dog training see these dogs all the time that are demand barking. We got a call in 21. This is a quick anecdote, right? But like, we got a call in 21 from a guy who was calling us from his closet. Right? Because,
I believe it. Yep.
Because during 21, we all started to work from home as a global society, right? Like, hey, the internet works, and we just remembered that it works, and we can all work from home. Right. And this gentleman calls us. He's got a Sillyham Terrier, right? I won't name him, obviously, but he's got a Sillyham Terrier. And if you guys are curious what a Sillyham Terrier is, pop over to AKC's website and find out what that is, right? But it's kind of like a white Scotty dog, for the record, right? And he's got a Sillyham Terrier, and he calls us one day from a location I won't mention either, right? And he goes, hey, listen, I've started to work from home. I'm a high paid executive, right? Like, I'm running a multinational corporation, and every time I get on the phone to do a conference call with my team, the dog begins to bark in the background. And so knows. Now, right now, the only way that I can do this is from the freaking closet, right? Like, if I go into the closet and my dog doesn't see me on the phone, I can have a meeting. But if my dog sees me, he begins to bark because he realized he knows that he can get attention for that barking.
He's just going to sit there and shut him up.
Right. That demand barking is really, really one of the things in professional dog training that we see a lot of these days, where people are calling us going, hey, listen, my dog just won't shut up when I'm on the phone. Right. And so again, like, building into that relationship, building into the learning style, right? And understanding that, like, hey, dogs learn by the things that we engage them with, right? And so, like, one of the things that I don't know that I've said on the podcast yet, but like, guys, hear me say this once and for all. Even a negative response will reinforce a behavior in a dog. If the behavior is attention seeking in nature, even negative
attention
response,
is still attention.
Negative attention is still attention, right? So like, even a negative response will reinforce that behavior, Absolutely.
Which leads us to accountability, right? Another one of our words.
Tell me about accountability.
Hold your dog accountable for what they know, right?
Yeah.
I don't care that the door just opened. I asked you to sit.
Are you going out of it?
I don't care that the Amazon delivery guy is here. I asked you to sit on the placemat, right?
But again, have the patience to build
now
to that place.
after you have taught them and after you have built it up and trained it, right?
That's right.
Of course. Yes, you're right.
You've walked through and had patience to get there.
Right. But once they do know a thing, right? Once you have trained and tested or proofed, right? Once you have gone through that and they do, and you know that they know it.
Yeah.
Then it's up to you to hold them accountable.
So I was about to address this, but I'd rather ask you this question. What is your criteria for like assessing whether or not a dog knows a thing?
Oh, that's a good question, actually. I don't know if I have a subjective answer for that. You might have stumped me. I'm with you in the sense
It's cool if
that
you are, man. Like,
I'm with you in the sense that I train each dog in hand, right? Or the dog in hand, right? And so for me, the easy answer is it depends on the dog, right?
Sure.
That's my lawyer answer is it depends. But I think if you're doing all of these things, right? If you have this relationship and if you're listening to your dog as well as teaching them, you're going to have an idea of when they know, right? I think you're going to know when these things are sinking in.
For me, right? Like I've actually put a numeric value on this over years because like, you know, it's such a nebulous concept to your point, right? Like how do you know whether or not a dog really knows what the hell's going on? Has everything to do with how many repetitions we put in, right? So one of the proofing ideas that we have around, you know, like how do we make sure that the dog knows it before they go home for a client or that kind of thing, right? Is the idea that they perform it 90% of the time or better, right? So, you know, can my dog still make a mistake? Of course, my dog makes mistakes.
Making mistakes is the biggest part of the learning process.
Absolutely. And in, you know, my Belgian Malinois that I aforementioned, right? Like Phantom, you know, after 7 years, homeboy still makes mistakes. Do I crush him for that? In no way, shape, or form, right? I go,
Sydney Michael spent some kennel time just yesterday. Right. I couldn't believe it.
And so like, buddy, like what's going on with you right now? Can you pull your stuff together and like get back after it, right? But that 90% metric, right? Like I think is really, really helpful, right? Because one of the ways that we teach at K-Pro, like people to proof behaviors, right? Is to push into the idea that like, we're going to proof behaviors over 10 weeks, right? So that first week, right, we're looking for 100%
and that
conformity.
That 10 weeks, that's consistency and that's patience.
Come on, tell me more.
Yeah.
Right?
That's it.
But like, you know, the reality is like that first week, I'm rewarding 100% of the time that dogs are performing, right?
Consistent reward schedule and into a variable.
That second week, right? That variable reward schedule starts to like play in, right? Where like we are teaching our clients the difference between static and variable reward schedules. Right. And we're going, hey, 9 out of 10 times, I'm just looking for exhibition of behavior. Right. And then the following week, 8 out of 10 times, I'm looking for exhibition of behavior. And then 7 and so on. Right. All the way down to, hey, I asked my dog for it 9 times. Right. And 1 time, that 10th time, I rewarded him. Right.
Yeah.
And then I go on almost purely verbal. And then even then, it's not a purist idea where I'm like, and you're never going to get a reward for sitting again, right?
They're going to get bored.
It's like, hey, look,
this is a game.
Like a week in between, I might reward you for doing something as fundamental as sitting.
Well, and when you talk about rewards, right, what people may automatically think of treats, right?
Yeah.
A reward is anything that makes your dog smile.
Dude,
it's anything that makes their tail wag. Reach down and give them a little pet. That's a reward.
Dude, I love that you said that because one of the most recent pieces of research that I read is funny enough that social reward, that thing where you go, oh man, absolutely, dude, that was my best day, right? That's the thing that's actually most rewarding to your dog.
What you're talking about is their, at least in the way I describe it, is their love language. Ooh. What is your dog's love language? Because each dog is a little bit different.
I know Gary Chapman's 5 love languages.
And like, each dog, I believe, has their own, right? So not all dogs love to be pet.
No,
they don't. Some of them really don't. Some dogs don't like treats.
Right.
They don't.
They don't like gifts.
So if you're offering your dog like, hey, come do this thing for me and I'll give you a treat. And they're like, well, no, I don't want that thing.
I don't need that.
Understanding what it is that they will work for is very important.
Right. And all the things that we've been talking about lead to this kind of big keyword, right? We've kind of saved it for last. It's engagement, right? If you don't have engagement from your dog, and engagement, you know, from my perspective, and I'm going to let you give your definition too, right? But engagement from my perspective is where your dog looks to you continually for leadership, right? So when you build enough of a reward schedule on your dog that your dog goes, okay, I get that I get rewards from you, right? But there's this other thing in life where I'm not simply looking for a paycheck, right? I'm doing
this out of love.
Right. One in the old school might have called this loyalty, right?
Sure.
So if we're looking at a dog that's massively loyal, right? And this is still out there in society, right? Where like dogs look for loyalty. Like take this for what it is if we're talking about loyalty, we're talking really specifically about the opportunity and availability for a dog to access us above other stimuli. Would you agree?
I would agree in a sense. I'm going to go a different way as far in the sense of like what engagement means. I think dogs are naturally loyal, right? Because of their instincts. I think they're naturally want to be loyal as long as they are getting their needs met. If we as humans, as the leader of that relationship, are not engaging with them, that's when that loyalty slips. You see where I'm going here?
What an amazing idea, right? As long as we're meeting their needs, dogs will always be loyal.
Right. They are naturally loyal because of the way we have not the way we have evolved them, but kind of.
Let me give us a brief synopsis of what I just heard. Can I do
Please?
that?
Yeah.
So like, as long as we're meeting dogs' needs and they feel fulfilled, there's no reason for them to be what we as people might call disloyal.
Yes. Yeah, that you're exactly right. And so the onus is on us.
I love you, man.
At all times. I love you too.
Yeah.
But how easy is it for us to get disengaged?
Easy.
Extremely. Our lives are so complex.
Well, look, man,
right?
TikTok has told us that we're 7 seconds or less
from
loyalty.
I don't know what that means. I don't watch TikTok.
I know. But take this for what it is. It's a really interesting study that just happened, in like the last year or so that says that, hey, if you don't have engaging content in 7 seconds or less, somebody's scrolling in TikTok, Reels, whatever it is that you're looking at, right?
Time out. If you're still watching, you beat it.
Good job. Yeah, good job. Hey, thanks for hanging out with us, man. We're hanging out with you, right? Yeah, for sure.
But to the engagement thing, right? It is on us to remain engaged. It's so easy. That phone is always in our pocket, right? And I have actually done experiments on this. I don't know if you know this, but I'm a scientist. I've done experiments about this with my dogs. As soon as I take my phone out, guess what they stop doing? Giving a shit about what I have to say, do, ask. They don't care because they know, oh, he's looking at that little box. I'm free to do what I want to do.
Dude, here's my favorite, right? Like I actually saw a dog this year, right? On a consult, right? So like this is one of my trainer's primary dogs, right? So like, at this point in my career, like I'm doing a lot of consulting in those places where people need something, right? And like, I'm like, hey, let me take a deep dive in this and let me see what's going on. Let me look at your case study. Let me see what's going on in your documentation, right? Like, let me see what's going on with this dog. When you pulled a phone out for this dog would bite the hell out of you.
I believe it.
It was a Frenchie, for the record.
And honestly, and this can bring us to our very last kind of thing, right? Quality over quantity.
Oh,
quality time over quantity time. I spend all day with my dog. Okay, but what are you doing? Right? That spending all day with your dog doesn't mean shit. What are you doing to engage?
Stop right there. Say it again. Spending all day with your dog
doesn't mean shit.
And I would say focused on you.
Yes, because you are engaged with your, presumably your life, your work, your family, your dating life, whatever it is that you have going on at that time, right?
Yeah, my old man would have said this about people is that everybody's at the center of their own universe.
Absolutely.
Right? My old man would have said that 100%.
You know what the center of your dog's universe is?
You.
Right.
That's right.
They have nothing else to do but to watch us, right?
That's right.
Waiting for us to engage with them. So yes, spend these people, everybody that's working from home, that's fantastic that you're getting to spend time with your dog. But if it's not quality time, it's nothing, right? I have clients all the time. They're like, well, I don't know what happened. I have a giant backyard. That's like having a cool play set in your backyard for Gabe. Right. He's going to go out there.
He's almost 14 now.
Oh, you guys should know Gabe by now. I talk about that kid every episode.
Homeboy looks like Troy Polamalu.
He's amazing.
14, right?
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
But it's like having a play set, right? With a slide and swings and everything.
Yeah.
Gabe's an only child. How many days in a row is he going to go out and enjoy that thing?
Dude,
6?
I'm gonna tell you not even, right?
Like 4 or 5.
Take this for what it is, right? Like, whenever we look at this, because all this comes back, right? So like when we're looking at quality over quantity, right? Like, hey, I don't care if you spend 5 solid minutes with somebody really digging into who they are, giving validity to who they are, understanding who they are from a base nature,
and
right?
Just caring, and legitimately caring.
Right.
That's why we're friends, man.
For folks that didn't see that, right? Like I made a big face, right? But like the reality of the situation is that like we have to care about each other. And that's one of the biggest things that I think that we miss in our society at large at this point is the ability to really care for each other. I don't care what side of the aisle you fall down on, like how you look at your political leanings, how you look at how you characterize yourself, right? If you're not, there's so many guys out there, like we have this word alpha that exists in dog training, right? And there are guys and ladies alike that like walk around out there and that walk around out there going, oh, I'm an alpha in my life. And I'm like,
so you're an asshole.
But what does that mean?
So I think there's and maybe this is another topic for another day.
It is probably.
There's a difference between an alpha and a leader.
I agree. But my point is that a true alpha, and we talked about this a little bit at some point, but like a true alpha is somebody who really cares about others around that person, right? I've seen ladies who fall into this category. I've seen non-binary folks that fall into this category. I've seen
it's a mindset. Men going back to what we're talking about,
right? Because it's like, hey, look, man, like I'm here for you, you're here for me, and everybody's good, right? And so as we wrap this up today, right? Like, and we've talked about, hey, how do we create mindset? One of the things that we also have to, I think, end on, right, is that the reality of the situation is that if you're not intentional about your mindset,
absolutely, please say that again,
right? If you're not intentional about your mindset, you're probably effing it up somewhere, right? Like, you need to be specific and intentional. You need to be, I'm going to say that again. You need to be specific and intentional about your mindset coming in. At K-Pro Canine and Canine Coaching with Chris, I guarantee you this. If we wake up and we are emotionally hit by something that day, every one of my trainers, if you call them and you ask them independently, will tell you the same thing that I'm sure that Chris will. And that is this, right? If you're emotionally hit, you lost somebody in your life. You had to put down another dog. You had a financial, you had to pay taxes. You had a financial hit, right? Like whatever that is that's stressing you out, right? If you're not emotionally intentional about creating, things like patience and love and teamwork and consistency in that scope, you're missing it. Right? Like you're not going to be effective the way that you want to be effective. The idea here is, again, right, that we create a mindset that is mindful and intentional so that we can help those around us. We can help the dogs around us. We can help the people around us. And we can do, how is it?
All the good we can do for as many people as we can.
For as long as we ever can, right? And that's the thing as humanity that we can do that helps draw us together. Do you want to
let me close this out here? Yeah, let me close this out. Evan, thank you, my man. This was fun.
Always fun.
Love is one of our key words. I absolutely love doing this.
Cheers, my man.
I'm Christopher Lamy, owner of Canine Coaching with Chris. This is my good friend, Evan Stewart, K-Pro Canine.
Yeah, I'm the master trainer over here. Yeah.
Congratulations to your wife, Heather, on being published. Oh my goodness. Okay. She had a book signing this week. I am so proud of her.
Guys,
please tell us a little bit.
No, I'm going to. Shameless plug. This is how I've been pitching this. And if she wants to kick me in the butt later and tell me that I'm doing it wrong, she's allowed, right? But shameless plug for my wife, Heather. 21-year veteran of the United States Navy. She wrote a poetry style memoir of her time in that takes her all the way from being a kid at 18 years old in the Navy all the way through, Yeah, it's up there, right? All the way through the end of her career where she went down and integrated submarines, everything in between. And I'll tell you honestly, I can't get two or three in without, and don't get me wrong,
mine's stained with tears already.
Right. You know, so like take it for what it is, man. Like she has really relatable concepts in there that even as a Marine, I'm over here going, oh my God, girl. Like what just happened over here?
Like the most emotional men I've ever met.
I know, man. I'm kind of I had a friend of mine a long time ago that called me a linebacker ballerina. I'm comfortable with that moniker, but like the reality is that this book right here brings it out on me. Of course, you can find it on everywhere really that you can find books, right? Like so Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Ingram Press really specifically. And you can go find her over at Heather's Poetry, right? Like and just figure it out.
TikTok channel, everything. Check her out, man.
Whole 9 yards,
it's amazing.
Man. Like go take a peek, right? Like if you're interested in the experience, because this is what a poetry memoir I think really does for us. Is it gives us the feeling of experience, right? So like
it gives you another perspective.
Right? I've known her a long time, obviously, right? Like, we've talked about this story. A little. Yes. Yeah, we've talked about this a little bit before, right? Like we've known each other almost 30 years now. And we're not that old, right? But legitimately, she takes a lot of inspiration, I think, from a poet named Wilfred Owen, who wrote about World War I, right? And wrote deeply about World War I. And I think that this experience from pre 9/11 all the way through the end of COVID, and the integration in submarines, I think this, man, I think that people need to read this. I think they need to understand, the feeling that came with that. I think it was, she talked a long time about writing just a memoir, right? And now she wrote a poetry memoir because she really wanted to connote the feeling and not just the words that went with it.
I need to get one from my mom. My mom actually almost joined the Navy years and years and years ago and wasn't able to.
Sure.
Because she was a female.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think this is unbelievable as not even just as a female and in the way these times are changing, but with the Navy and as a mother and through COVID and
if you
then the
think about
submarines
from 1999,
right?
And this is really kind of interesting to me from 1999, right, to 2020. Imagine how much we grew as a society globally. Imagine how much we grew as a society in the U.S., right? And imagine how the Navy really specifically had to capitulate to some of those ideas.
Absolutely.
Right? But so guys, hey, listen, I'm going to wrap us up.
Please do.
Cool.
Let's get
out.
Guys,
listen, thanks for joining us today on Whiskey and Wolves, right? Like, thank you for your time. We cannot thank you enough for the absolute investment that you have. We want to share with you that, man, we have a passion for this. And we want to share that passion with you. We want to debunk the bunk in dog training. And guys, remember to like, subscribe, and share all of these things to your friends, especially if you're in working dog communities, if you're in sport dog communities. We're going to continue to engage those things as we go forward. And until the next time, cheers, my friend.
Cheers, man. Go out there and have fun, guys.
Cheers. Have a great time, guys. Real quick, last ideas, right? Like, thank you to Maker's Mark for being a B corporation and really taking not only personal ideas into account, but also environmental ideas into account. Thank you for not simply chasing the dollar, right?
And still being delicious.
And still being fucking delicious, really? Right?
Yep.
Because like, take it for what it is, guys. This is a delicious whiskey. It's one of the favorites that I've had on the show so far. This is the French oaked version, number 46. I highly recommend it.
Highly, highly recommend. And look how damn cool this is, right?
Of course you want like the wax poured over it, right? Yeah, for sure.
Is my autism showing?
No, you just want to touch it more. It's fine if you do. But like, no joke, right? Like love Maker's Mark. for all the things they've done for whiskey.
For all the right reasons.
You know, I first ran into it in the Marine Corps, right? Like, and I was like, oh my God, this is bougie whiskey. Look, they dip everything, right? You know?
To a Marine, everything is bougie.
Like,
oh my God,
right.
they have plastic forks.
Well, take it for what it is, bro. I mean, we're still riding aircraft born in Vietnam, right? So like, you know, things are bougie. In the Air Force, I know that there are different ideas. But guys, thank you for being with us today. Maker's Mark, thank you for being ethically produced and preserved.
Absolutely.
Have a great one, guys. And hey, listen, as always, train happy.